Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the opportunity also to be here, Matthias. Great to have the opportunity to talk about technical directing, something that I'm very passionate about. If you know me a little bit, you probably know me as someone who is going into technical directing, spread the gospel about it, and Python. That's the two things people know me mostly about. So yeah, I want to talk about technical directing. What is a technical director? How do they influence the industry? How the role is defined specifically? Like if you are interested to either become one or if you work with one, so you understand better what that is exactly. Let me quickly start with myself, who I am. So I am a technical director. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm especially focused on pipeline, look depth, lighting, and compositing. And I'm also coaching technical directors, Python, and do mentoring. And I have a YouTube channel where I do a podcast and I do YouTube videos, basically. And before that, I worked at Weta Digital, Framestore, Macrovision on Avatar: The Way of Water, Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings, Monsters at Work, and The Amazing World of Gumball as a technical director, basically. And you're probably wondering, how do I got here? So my background is in media computer science. So that's where I did my bachelor, learned the basics of programming. Then I did technical directing actually at the Animation Institute. And then did work as a professional TD, often in pipeline, but also in lighting TD, and even as a lighter at Studio Zoy, Arx Anima, Dwarf Animation Studio, VFX, and even for Otto, for everyone who's like in Germany. And I also created my own open source pipeline Plex, which won the award for Breaking Point, one of the people who won the award for that. So one of my beliefs is basically art needs artists, as we kind of talked just now, and the production needs automation, which means you need scripting. You either you yourself or in your team, you need people who can script. Because I think the artists of the 21st century, independent if you are a TD or not a TD, you need four elements to be successful in this generation, basically. First is skill. Obviously, you need to know how to do your thing. Second is branding, which means you have to be out there, you have to be found, you have to have a show reel, you have to have a social media account, and so on. Third is teamwork. It is a team project. So you have to know the soft skills and teamwork and deadlines and so on. And fourth, I believe scripting to everyone, because scripting is about automation. It's a difference between doing something well and doing something well in a lot of iterations in the productions and going again and again and again and again, basically. So this is also why I called my podcast the 21 Artist Show, because it is about talking how to become the artist of the 21st century. So if you're interested in that, you can find it on Spotify and YouTube, basically. So let's dive into the specific person who is a technical director. So what is a technical director? And for me, it's basically the bridge between the artist and the programmers. So they combine the understanding. So a technical director has to know both. They know how the art is working to some degree. They are maybe artists, and they have to have all the basics of technology. They understand the basic behind it, and so on and so forth. So they create the bridge between that. And if you think of roles that you can be, there's a variety of technical directors. It basically every department can have a specific technical director. For example, in the assets department, scan TD, modeling TD, surfacing TD, rigging TD, grooming TD, pipeline TD, and so on. The shots department, motion capture TD, layout, animation, lighting, rendering, compositing, and pipeline TD. So basically, every department can have a TD depending on the size. The bigger the studio, the bigger the departments, the more likely it is that you have a TD. Usually, say 5 to 10 artists need one TD to handle all the complexity and the technical issues and the difficulties that you have, basically. So, what are the requirements to become TD, or what are the requirements for a TD, basically? First one is to have technical understanding and solutions. TD is about problem solving. It's about, hey, Maya is crashing. What should we do? Why is it that? Hey, it takes like 2 hours to open this nuke scene. Why is that? Hey, the rendering takes forever. Can we optimize that? So all of these is basically that. And for that, you don't only need to know how to solve it. You also need to know all the departments. If you solve rendering issues, you need to know what a firefly is. You need to understand how the renderer works. You need to know how the lighting compositing connection works, so you can optimize things for both at the end of the day. As a problem-solving skill, you need to know scripting, because it's one of the important parts of problem-solving is scripting, automating things. You need to know basically Linux, Shell, and Git, because that's part of that. You need obviously to know the basic software, especially Maya, Nuke, Houdini. Depending on the environment, it could be also 3ds Max and so on. It could be Blender, Katana, and Unreal. It depends a little bit what you know, but you need to know the basics, and you need to be flexible enough to jump between them, basically. And obviously the typical workflow, Autodesk Flow, FTrack, and basic databases. And it's very important, that is one of the reasons why TDs are not programmers. You need to have good communication skills, because your goal is to communicate between the artist and the technical people in between. So you need to talk to the artist and you need to talk to the programmers, or you are the programmer, but you always jump between them. So you need to understand one side and the other side and can be able to communicate between them, be part of them, and so on. So problem solving and communication are the two most important things of a real TD, basically. So what are the benefits and the downsides of doing this job? So the benefits is obviously, as a TD, you have a lot of responsibility. A lot of your decisions have huge impact, basically. And that means, that's why I always say like 5 to 10 artists and then 1 TD who supervises them, helps them, supports them with tools, supports them with solutions, and so on. You need to stay updated. So we just heard about AI. So this is something you have to think about. How much is this realistic? How much is this just smoke and mirrors, basically? You have more flexibility generally. A lot of TDs, you generally work per task. They don't have like a shot or something. It's more about, hey, we need this from you now. Can you fix this in like until the end of the day or until the end of the week, and so on. So it's not just this like, 5 shots per day thing like artists usually, for example, have. So that allows you a lot of freedom, which means every situation can be a little bit more different. You are suddenly in Maya today, in Nuke tomorrow. You're suddenly working on code next week, and then you work on something more artistic the week afterwards. So depending on the role that you actually pick, that can be a lot of freedom and difference. And you have the best of both worlds, because you are working with artists, and you are maybe an artist, maybe you light as a TD to some degree, and you are a programmer, a technician, you work on programs and write code and so on and so forth. And generally speaking, in every industry, all technical roles are better paid and have better job security, basically. So that is the positive part. The negative part, obviously, you have more responsibility, you have to stay updated. You have less influence about the final work. You are not the artist. You usually don't create the final image. You are supporting. That's a supporting role. Sometimes people don't know what a TD is. It's like you have to explain. So that's my role. That's what I usually have to do. And sometimes people mistake TD with IT, which is also not the same thing. IT is about like networking and computer stuff. TD are about the supporting of the artist in the DCCs, basically. So how I define technical directors solve problems. And one of the most important tools of how to solve problems for us is scripting in visual effects, animation, and games. It is Python. So basically, Python allows us to make steps faster, and it makes steps possible. So let's dive in what that means in the result, basically. So first one, Python is a scripting language that you can use in basically every software that we use in visual effects, animation, and games. So if you want to code in Maya, in 3ds Max, in Houdini, in Cinema 4D, in Blender, and Nuke, Katana, whatever, you can literally learn one language and to rule them all, basically. And so that makes it super powerful. So if you want to learn any scripting language in this industry, Python is the way to go, basically. So what does it mean to make things faster? So what are the typical steps that we have is save, load, import, export, combining steps. You press a button, multiple things happen, the scene is setting up, and so on, and restructuring steps, and so on. So there's a lot of things I create a tool to simplify things. I create a tool to prepare things. I create a tool to put steps into, instead of taking 1 minute, it takes 5 seconds because you press a button and everything is setting up. So for example, typical things. You have things like this. You have a loader, like, you don't have to search the file or something. You just open the loader, you search the shot, press load, and it opens it. And maybe it set up the Maya with the right resolution, FPS, and so on and so forth. Basically, you have all the other tools, saving, exporting, publishing, quality checkers, and so on. Basically, remove everything that is boring and production necessary from the artist so they can focus on the art, and the technical director sets up and removes all the blockages, all the time waste, all the things that basically remove the artist focusing on what they actually good at, and that is the art basically. So for example, here's an example. So let's say you have a light linker editor, basically a light editor, and so you can do a lot of things with it. But what if the artist says, hey, can you create me a custom light linker? Yes, it's just a few buttons, but that's the buttons that I always need. Maybe they're already in light editor, maybe they're not, but doesn't matter, because now the artist saves time by using this maybe even simple tool that just has a few buttons, but these are the buttons he uses again and again and again and again. And over the week, over the month, suddenly he saves like, I don't know, 50 hours or something like that, because not searching, not clicking around, and so on. So it can be some simple like this. And for example, this tool is just like 80 lines of code, 90 lines of code at the end of the day. The other side is making steps possible, which means you create custom tools, like, for example, render threads when it didn't exist previously. You can create something like automatic rim lights, automatic eye lights, which basically simplifies the workflow. You can create custom nodes, like, for example, a toon shader is to some degree something new. There is no specific toon shader, or there is, but it's not good enough maybe. And so you create something like that. You can create custom simulations. Procedural, very important. Obviously, you can sometimes do it with nodes, but there's a level where Python, for example, will allow more complexity. And the thing that is the closest to AI, machine learning, which also is very, very connected to Python at the end of the day. So you can start to integrate machine learning and can optimize workflows much more precisely than with just a simple tool without that machine learning. And here's, for example, a tool I wrote for Nuke to create a custom write node. So you have in the review process basically. So you can see here you have all the information. It's great for exporting, and then people can review. They see all the information, and it also has a render thread, so you can render it in multiple threads. Especially at the time of the writing, there was no render threads basically. And this shows you a little bit of how much I believe you need to know Python. So maybe if you're like at the left side, you can see artistic to technical, and then at the bottom is a production to support, basically. And so we start with the artist, technical director, and then we have basically a software developer, researcher. And then with every step, you need more and more and more Python. I believe even an artist will benefit from basic Python. You code like 10 lines, 20 lines, and you simplify, like with the lighting tool. You just write something, and suddenly you have this simple shell button. It's like, whoa, boom, things gone. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, most artists use plugins and tools and so on, but sometimes they're not perfectly for their work. And so creating something like this is always really good. And that is the thing what you can do with Python. You basically can write literally a tool that can work in Nuke, in Houdini, and Max, and Maya, and it's the same tool, has the same rules, and works with the same language at the end of the day, basically. And also, what important part is of specifically Python, and that's something what I do, for example, when I teach Python, is you don't need to learn everything in Python. Like, you don't need to learn every language facet. You only need to learn what you actually work with. So a Python for artists means, what Python do you need to work as an artist in 3D, basically? What Python do you need in Maya, Houdini, and Nuke? Which means at the end of the day, it's probably like 20, 30% of Python that you actually need to generally work with Python. And that is what you should focus on. And that makes more palatable to learn at the end of the day. So there's also like a rule of thumb of how long it takes to learn Python, because a lot of people say, oh, this takes like forever. So it doesn't take that long. So in generally, I would say rule of thumb, to become like a technical artist level, it takes around like 3 months. You know how to read and write code, and you can write simple, helpful applications. A technical directing level, I would say like 6 to 12 months if you do the right courses, obviously. And that means basically you can write pipeline applications, you can code with the team. So you don't just code the simple things, you literally can share it and other people look at it. And then the software level, it takes more like 2 or 3 years where you write really great advanced applications and work basically full time as a programmer. So one of the things that I see people fail is because of the "I can't do" attitude. It's like, oh, I'm an artist, I cannot do that. They're learning alone. They have no clear deadlines, no clear structure, no feedback, no way to ask questions, and so on. And the best way to fail in learning something like Python is to basically do a Udemy course, Skillshare, or Code Academy, because it's just some bunch of videos you just watch. Often they're not focused on, for example, in our case, on visual effects, just bare basic Python. And you don't have a goal, you don't have to, you just go through chapter to chapter and just try to learn it. Where for me, it's very important we focus on a goal, we focus on that. We have, for example, in our Python courses, we have live Q&As, you can ask questions, we give feedback and so on. Because learning a skill is always important to interact with other people and to know where this is going at the end of the day, basically. So the best way to learn Python is to write helpful scripts while being guided in a group. And I think that's best way in every skill. If you do modeling or whatever, it's just the best way. So let me show you quickly what you can do if you always thought about learning Python. Let me show you what you can do after like 10 weeks of doing a good training. So for example, this is the results of my students. For example, they learned Python for 10 weeks. And then they had like 2 weeks to create a final application, and they created like arm rigs, they created distribution, shading tools, and so on. And for Python for Nuke, they create their own application, some torchlight in 3D, and so on and so forth. So basically, it allows you. It is often not as difficult as you think to learn a skill like that, but it is, in my opinion, vitally, even for artists, to have a decent amount of knowledge for that. Basically, we also talk about how this interacts with AI later. So let me quickly also introduce you to the other two examples of technical directors. One is the famous pipeline TD. So pipeline TD is about data handling. It's all about saving, loading, importing, exporting plugins and settings. It's basically all these things of publishing and so on. How does the data go from one person, one department to the next? So the modeler is finished. The model should go to the rigging department. What they do, they press a push button, publish button, and suddenly it's exported as an, I don't know, OBJ, as an FBX, as a Maya file, and then the rigger presses another button, import, and then it's done and they can start work. So they basically connect the dots between the departments and they organize all of that. So the departments only focus on rigging, on modeling, but they don't care how the data comes from where and how it's, what format it is and so on. So this is obviously a more program-heavy environment. As a pipeline TD, you really need to know the pipeline. You really need to know all the basic software. You should be aware of every department's way of working because you need to understand how to handle them. You need to understand all the pipeline aspects, especially something like shot grid or FTrack, and so on and so forth. And that's the thing. And in terms of the scale that we had before, in terms of coding level, this will be on the technical directing software development level. The other thing, which is more artistic, lighting technical director. So basically your goal is to help lighting artists to do their goal. Sometimes that means you are literally lighting. For example, I had this example where a lighter gave me a shot with 20 lights in it, and it took 2 hours to render. So I took the shot and I brought it down to 5 lights, and it suddenly took only 30 minutes to render. So because I'm a lighter, I could simplify the shot. I can relight it and make it simpler, focusing on the optimization part, basically. So you look a lot in lighting technical director, look a lot about render layers, AOVs, render optimization, lighting templates, maybe with the lead together, complex lighting setups, and you write like lighting tools. You press a button and there is a lighting setup so already done, basically. And that is a few things about that. And let's dive into the topic that we just kind of like had a little bit touched about AI. How does AI and technical director play together? So I always have technical artist, technical director, and then they're not the same as AI artists or AI-driven professionals. Simply for the reason that these are not professions yet. So so far, these are just prompt writing. Prompt writing is not a technical director, it's just text. Basically, everyone can write a prompt. That's not particularly difficult. But there are elements where technical directing actually comes in. So let's dive into how does the future machine learning and AI work with what I just described as a technical director. One of the ways is, for example, machine learning. We just had a talk. We have an event that is every month that's called TD Meetup, and we did with Foundry Copycat. Copycat is a node that allows you to train it. And so, for example, it can train tracking. So you give a bunch of images, input, you make a ground truth, the corrected version, and then it does it for the whole rest of the shot. So you give 4 images, but it does it for 100 images, for example, which is great. So you don't have to track 100 frames. You just track 4 frames, for example, and it trains to track that for the rest. It's kind of an optimized version of the automation tracking, rotoscoping, and so on. It is very powerful, but it's basically machine learning as a software. And the more you understand and the more technical you are, the better you can use this tool because you understand how it thinks, how to optimize it, and so on. And the more you learn something like Python, the more you can work with it correctly because you understand how this works. So here are a few examples that you use with Copycat. You can sharpen things, you can color. This is a black and white originally. You can color things, and so on and so forth. For more complex environments in visual effects, for example, we have ChatGPTs and so on. That will not work for us. So what we need is more complex environments where we can have basically no trees. And one of the examples that we looked, for example, is and that's now the AI part is Comfy UI, and we looked at actually in Nuke. And so Comfy UI is basically advanced stable diffusion pipeline. But the cool part is it is node based. So there is a prompt, but there is a lot of other things. You can set up a lot of things, the resolutions, difference, the negative prompt, and so on. So this is more what we as a professional will need. Like ChatGPT is not good enough. This looks more what we need. It's basically like Nuke, just with AI generation as well in there, which allows us to do more. And especially we can actually integrate it as Nuke with Python. So if you know Python, you can take this and put it into Nuke, which we did actually in this TD meetup, and highly recommend if you're interested in that, basically. And that is the opposite of what I just talked. So if you're familiar with the CEO of NVIDIA and also Mark Zuckerberg, they are famously saying recently AI will take over and especially coding will go away. So let me go into the opposite side because I believe it is the other way around, but let me phrase it. So why should I learn Python with AI taking over, basically? Why is that even important? So first thing, even AI coding, like prompting, will need supervision. If you have no idea what you're doing, the code is not reliable. You don't know if it's correct, how much it's correct, if you need to fix, if it's good or bad, and so on. The same thing for art. If you are a bad director, you cannot make a movie because you cannot judge why it's bad or how it's bad. If you are a great director and you can use AI to generate videos, then you can judge and try to figure out your vision, basically. And the same thing applies for coding. If you are a bad coder, the AI will not save you. If you are a great coder, the AI can support you to become faster. The other part is all AI, or machine learning especially, all machine learning modules currently are with Python. So if you are interested in using stable diffusion like Comfy UI and want your own generative AI, actually there are free open source like modules out there, but you need to know Python to use them. So Python is a very powerful language in terms of that, even for that one. And you can even use this, as I had in my Python Copilot course, as a helpful assistant. So while you code, you have an AI on your side, and you can ask it questions, you can ask for bug fixes, you can ask it for code reviews, and so on, which means you will use AI as an assistant. So you are a coder, and you use the AI to help you be more productive, be faster, less mistakes, and know more, basically. So you enhance your productivity at the end of the day. And that's where I see AI being realistically working at the moment. Is you need to become a coder. That's a great thing because it will allow you to work with different elements. You are understanding machine learning faster. You understand that. And you can use AI to produce more. Like, for example, in this case, you can maybe reduce your time to do the same thing with like Googling and skills to like 25%, 50% using something like GitHub Copilot, basically. So this is what I found out when I did the course myself. Finally, I would like to show you a quick study of what a technical directing life can look like, what a project can look like where you're technical director. This is a very much visual effects, very much hands-on project, so not every project will be exactly like this. But this, I think, was a really nice project to show you what a technical director's problem-solving skills are. So this project called Anyman, the idea was basically we wanted a MyBridge environment where a realistic human runs like a dog, falls down like a cat, flies like a bird, basically. So a very uncanny valley thing. And so the idea was basically to have as much realism as possible. So we did a photogrammetry, I will come into that, and we motion captured animals to mash them together, basically. So a lot of technical challenges to do that. You know, for example, here you can see this is a buzzard we applied on a scanned human. And my job in this case was I did the background, the shading, and the lighting, but I also, with the two directors, I did the motion capture and the photogrammetry to make this as realistic as possible at the end of the day. So this is another frame, for example. You can see this is like a little bit uncanny valley and stuff like that. And so, for example, when we were researching how to do a good photogrammetry, we did a lot of testing beforehand. And that is where the technical directing comes in. It's about figuring out a solution to a problem. How can we make the best photogrammetry possible? So we did a lot of testing. We throw M&Ms around and tested this and that and photogrammetry objects and found out what's the best balance. And you can see here, this is the final result, how we did it at the end. One of the things we learned, a lot of light. So that's why we have a lot of light, a lot of flat light, so at least shadows. So that's why we have light from every angle. We wanted to have rails to have a stable camera perspective. Then we did 5 cameras in an X. So we have a little bit of different perspectives from different angle. You know, you can see different, and then we can photogrammetry it around while that. And for example, we put the arms on stabilizations because obviously someone who holds arms like this will jitter a little bit. But at the same time, we wanted to look under the arms to also get that information, for example. And that is a great example for a technical director. It's like, okay, this is the idea of the director. How do we get it? How can we make a good photogrammetry? And this was also not the perfect situation at the end of the day, but it was a very, very interesting way to approach this. This was another one where we were like, hey, how can we capture a cat falling down and flipping and doing that nicely? Cat is very small, so we could not do motion capture like typical. So what we did is we created surrounding GoPro. So this is like, I think, 16 GoPros. And so we did a tracking and we put markers on it. And we tested that with M&Ms before. We put a GoPro, we put it on 120 FPS, and then we looked at if it can track M&Ms falling, because M&Ms are small carol points, which means if it can track an M&M falling, it can track a red dot on a paw of a cat, basically. So that is exactly how technical directing is. Like, okay, there's a problem. Motion capture is not a solution. What else can we do? How about GoPros? Okay, but how do we track? Okay, let's put some markers in so we can have the joints. Oh, okay, and then from that we went like this, basically. And this is the root graphics that we created. You can see here on the left side the falling cat, on the top side the dog running through a leg, and on the bottom side here you can see our photogrammetry thing, how we did that, basically. And here I can show you again. And then the other part, the last part that we did is, okay, we want to make sure, since it's only one environment, basically one kind of 180-degree scale, we wanted to make it that it works on every angle. So 180 degrees there, because we wanted to render quickly at the end, because it's only 6 months. So what we did is we tried to build this environment. This is like lighting and shading on my part, and then created this final image. But the cool part about it, we can go into basically any perspective, and the lighting and the shading will hold. So that was like an extra, like figuring out and making sure. So we invested a lot of time in the beginning. So when we are rendering, we just put the camera somewhere and just render, and it looks still good. Maybe tweak a little bit, but not too much, because usually every shot needs a lot of adjustments. In this case, we knew it's just one environment, so we can create this kind of element basically. And like here, you can see it's a little bit stuttery, but you can see here it holds even though it's a 180 degrees shift, it still looks very much the same, which really saved a lot of time in preparation basically at the end of the day. And here with the character, probably stuttering a little bit. This was early, it's not the final one. And yeah, and quickly with the animals, kind of, this was like flying cats, basically. And there was some markers. We will also show this in the making of at the end. And yeah, the important part was like, to capture this. And again, that's what the technical director basically does. Is like finding technical solution to creative problems, basically. It's like, oh, we want to have this kind of information. How do we get that? And okay, let's try the normal way, like motion capture doesn't work. Let's try this different way. Let's see how it works. Do a test. And when the test is successful, let's do it in a more kind of trial. Okay. But yes, let's roll the making of. I think that will show basically a little bit the how Animan was made. I think that's kind of also it's great summary how a technical directing work can look like basically at the end of the day in a movie. Okay, yes, and yeah, just as a finishing touch, if you're interested in all of these more, the artists of the 21 basically century, recommend you my podcast 21 Artist Show. You can find it on YouTube, on my website, or on Spotify. We had some really cool guests over the years. Just my website, alexanderrichtertd.com. Basically, I have a huge blog with a lot of information. I'm very focused on technical artist, technical director, but I also do a lot of artist, visual effects, animation, and games topics, because for me it's very important to kind of like connect with all that, because there's a fine line. I'm teaching Python for Maya, Nuke, Houdini, and Max, and Advanced basically. And I have a newsletter where I talk about current situations, including AI, but also, how to negotiate, how to apply for jobs, how to become a lead, how to become a technical person. Communication is a very important part of the job, basically. So being a good TD means you are a good communicator, because you always have to translate between, what the artist wants and what he says, basically. And so it's very, very important to do that. So if you're interested, feel free to join my newsletter. And that's it from me. I'm not sure, but yes, do we have so time for a Q&A?
Always, always.
Okay, then that's me for today. But what's important, because also of the AI topic, is what's important is it doesn't matter what you do. I think it's always good to be a problem solver, and that will always apply in the history of mankind. And if you have a problem solver in communication, it doesn't matter what AI will be doing. You will use it for solving problems. You write emails with it, you create images with it, you create code with it, tools, whatever. If your focus is problem solving, and for example Python is just a tool to solve problems, like AI is just a tool to solve problems, you will always find something to do and kind of like. So that's what I believe, and that's why I highly encourage every artist. This is a technical field. Every artist should be lifted from zero technical knowledge to at least like a 10% technical understanding, because even Maya is a difficult software. It's not MS Paint. It is like, the more you understand Maya on a technical level, the more you can avoid crashes, slowdowns, and just everything that basically stops you from being a good artist, even on that level.
All right. Yeah. No, I fully agree. I fully agree with that. I mean, I see this just, or I've seen this in many times also in the professional field, where if an artist has let's say a little bit of experience with scripting, it's not only that they can troubleshoot things better by basically training their own brains to logically break things down more into bite-sized chunks, but it also is very good to be able to have a dialogue with more people, or especially so that they can, for example, talk directly to a software developer over time. So you can actually free up other people, like for example TDs. So that's one side. But it also makes an artist, for example, or in general, a person who can do some scripting, more aware of kind of the whole production pipeline, in the sense of, what do I need to tell the person before me, let's say a modeler or texture artist or something like that, how I need my data to be structured. But then also, when passing things downstream in the pipeline to the next person, I'm much more aware of the potential questions that they may have from their perspective towards me. So in the sense of, which format do you need, which type of rig do you need, and so on. So in general, it's not only that you can script yourself, but it's also about the mindset of thinking in the flow of the production, and also understanding more of the roles and the necessity for structured logical workflows. That's something I didn't have at the beginning. I mean, that's not something that you learn in architecture, for example. But I learned over time with working with extremely technical people. But yeah, it's a fantastic thing. So, but maybe I mean, you've been working in the industry for quite some time. Can you give us some, let's say, some anecdotes that you know, that people say, I cannot do scripting, and then you say, I don't know, maybe you convince them, and something very positive came out of it. Do you have some? Right, I guess you would have a lot of anecdotes, but just for the people that are maybe a little bit hesitant of, should I even try, to give them some positive vibes or positive aspects to actually do it.
Yeah, I actually specialized on that. I didn't, it was not on purpose, but it became this thing that people come to me as a last resort. As I tried scripting, it always failed. I come to you because you seem to be the person to be the fixer for hopeless cases. And so for me, that was like the very common thing. Like I get this thing. It's like, oh, I did a Udemy course. I did this course. I did this online thing on YouTube. I bought a course or whatever. And I have like I think like I would say 50% are people that come to me are most of people that come to me are artists. So I'm focusing on artists. I'm not really like I have sometimes programmers, but most of the people that come to me are artists. And a lot of them either like tried a little bit or tried actually, and they always find themselves in being either bored or lose the thread. Like I don't know, after like chapter 5, I didn't know what's going on, and it was also unrelated to anything. It was just some data science or whatever. And so yeah, I had a bunch of people who literally told me in the beginning, I'm not sure if I will succeed in this course because I failed multiple times. It's like I just try. Like I literally, they came with the attitude of like, and I had a bunch of people literally, even in this current cohort, I had someone just recently said to me, I didn't expect to really understand it. I really expect to feel like empowerment. I still remember there's like one, like I always ask in the beginning, what's your goal? Because for me, it's all about your goal. If your goal is just the minimum, that's okay. If your goal is to become a future programmer, that's also cool. That means you have to spend more time. But I remember one goal which I really liked. Someone told me, I'm doing this course because I don't want to feel dumb when the TD gives me some lines of code. I want to understand them. I want to, I don't want to just copy paste this hieroglyphics. And if it doesn't work, I'm a dummy dumb. And then I remember at the end, I asked again, like, how was it going? And she's like, yeah, I now can do it. I can read it. I'm maybe not planning to write a lot myself, but I can deal with the code. So it's for me, it's empowerment. And it's again, like for me, it's I personally love to work with artists who can communicate what they want because they understand, they try to understand what you do, because that's also my job. I have to understand, like if I'm working as a, for example, lighting TD, I have to understand how the lighter is working, literally. I have to know their workflow. I have to know how lighting works for them creatively. So when they talk to me, I absolutely understand what they say when they say, "Oh, my light linker wants to be la 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 la," because 99% what they say is not what they want. In terms of, because in their mind it makes sense, but in the software it doesn't make sense. It's a completely different software. So what they tell me, if I would write what they tell me, they will hate it because it's not exactly what they want. So I have to interpretate through my own understanding of their craft, and I have to ask the right questions. So I figure out the exact tool that they actually need versus, because they don't know, they cannot break it down into technical terms. So they just say, "Oh, I want this kind of thing that does this and this and this." And if I will do it, that's not what I want. And so I have a bunch of these kind of stories where people just literally came to me as like, "Yeah, I just tried. I wanted to see." And often people succeed in a higher thing. And the only requirement that I always have is you have to put in the time. If you don't put it in time, there's nothing I can do to you. So for me, it's the requirement of putting the time. And my responsibility is to convince you that you can do it. And give you good content basically. Because at the end of the day, I believe everyone in the world can learn basic scripting. It's logical thinking. It's not like if you ever did a math course at school, then you can do scripting. Basically, X equals something, then you can do scripting. Basically, and again, one of the things when I talk to in my podcast, for example, with the old guard, basically, Carl Rosendale from PDI and stuff like that, they always describe how challenging everything was, but also exciting because there was no software. They had to invent the software. And so in like 30 years ago, everything was very technical. Every person in the room was a PhD programmer, whatever, and there was a few artists in there. And I think we shifted away from being at least decently technical, and we have now a lot of people who have no idea about the technical background of anything. They just learn how to press a button and how to put a slider to a certain number. And if something doesn't work, like Maya's crashing, Houdini takes forever to open, the renderer is not working, something is not working that worked before, they have no idea what to do because they didn't understand the background of the system. And I always quote Alan McKay on the podcast that we did, is like, what if there's someone who knows how to press the button harder than you? Then you're out of your job, basically. And which is this discussion with AI. What if the AI can press the button harder? faster than you. That means that there is no need for you the moment the AI can actually press the button, put the slider to the correct value, which it is a different beast if understanding why the slider is at 5, why the button pushed at this moment is a different beast for a lot of situations, basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's I've seen this multiple times in the industry also, where there were so Yvonne Wende, who I've worked with, she also has presented at the ICE conference in past, and Equate Arts that she founded is also one of the ICE partners. So there's this anecdote that she mentioned to me that I will never forget it. So she's a world-renowned matte painter. She's been in the industry for so long. And she told me that she was in meetings very often. I mean, she has seen everything. She also worked on Avatar and so many movies. But people that didn't, for example, didn't know her particularly, or even, I don't know, maybe because I don't know what the reasons were, but there were these. She mentioned meetings where they were discussing certain technical things, and she asked something about how can we approach this, like maybe from a little bit from a passive side, just in the sense of trying to get to know a person and try to say, okay, how can we move forward with this thing. And then the answer that she got, and she mentioned that she's gotten it many times, is the answer, yeah, that's very complicated, and so basically extremely dismissive, not knowing that what she had gone through before, and so that's kind of the attitude of the other person, just putting you down. Yeah, there. This is something you wouldn't understand that. I mean, that's when she was telling me this. This was like, it's like I hate this. But there are a lot of situations out there with people that are just their nature is maybe dismissive, or they have no idea to work in teams together and to motivate other people, and just in general not be assholes, right? And that is something that is very, very common in the industry, or let's say in industries in general. Now there are also, I don't know, different cultures, different expectations of people growing up in whatever it is, with this notion of, yeah, maybe my role as, for example, as a woman, I'm not supposed to understand this. I'm not supposed to be working on these things like programming, or I don't have the skills. There are many, many different aspects regarding this that I find are hindering a lot of people to even try. And I mean, I've seen this myself in a lot of the aspects which you also described with, I don't dare doing it because I might fail, or I don't dare. I've seen this many, many times, that I'm not good enough to even try. And how can we bring change to this, to actually say, yeah, come on, try it. What would you give as a tip to people to say, okay, independent of where you're from, what your background is, how do you get people out of their let's say little turtle shell, for example?
That reminds me actually on my mentoring. So I'm also do mentoring, and what I recently noticed in the last years, it's a lot more self doubt than before. I think it's part of this self
Mm.
health thing where people start to reflect much stronger about themselves and become this kind of more judgmental to themselves to some degree, also because you need to find the balance, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, most people who say something like this, I always call them you stop thinking. And I barely heard in my life someone said to me, "You don't understand." I think because I'm a TD, they're very trying not to do that. But I hear a lot of things like that's too complicated. I heard a lot of that, and in most cases I say bullshit. It's like, no, I know it. It's not complicated. I can do that. I can do it. Like a lot of times, like, oh, it takes 1 month. No, I can do it tomorrow. And I think that is one of the ways that I see. I think that's the argument I always give to learn a slight amount of technical knowledge or scripting or whatever is empowerment. You are empowered. Someone says it's too complicated to write you this helpful tool. You say bullshit. I know what it takes. I maybe cannot write it myself, but I know the concept of it. Same thing, like if you know how the film production works, maybe you cannot make a film, but you know what it takes. You know how the budget is, or how long it will take, or what's possible or not possible. And so that is my comment always is like, learn it for your own sake. Because if you learn problem solving, like, hey, Maya is crashing, instead of just waiting for a TD or someone to fix it, let me try a few things out. Like, let me import half the scene, or let me import another scene and see if that's still crashing. And just like playing is basically, a TD is playing. It's bringing back because that's what we do. We are guessing. Like I have no idea. Like if I do something, I have no idea. Like maybe I have the experience and I had it before, so I go from memory. Oh, this is the error I had a few times. I know what to do. Or what I do, and that's what I did, is like I break down the process into what is the problem. Okay, it's crashing. What is the typical way for crashing? It's probably maybe one object is too big or whatever. Okay, let's look at the file size. Oh, this is 2 TB. Okay, then maybe that's the problem. So basically, yeah, but it's playing. It's like guessing. I'm constantly guessing. I have no idea why it's crashing or why the render takes forever. I'm just trying to figure it out by trying this, no, trying this, no, trying this, no, trying this, no. And over time, you get better guessing. And so for me, it's fun. I like problem solving, and I think everyone personally, to some degree, likes problem solving because that's life. And so I always say everyone can learn problem solving, which is, and one of the most powerful problem solving for us is scripting. And one other difference I always say, scripting, like Python, is a language. If you know how to speak English, you know how to speak Python, because it is a language which follows a grammar and vocabulary and a certain thing. So if you want to do something, you just write the sentence and it does it. And so separating it from programming to language is not the right way. It is language. So the more you practice, not just watch, but practice, the more you do it. The same thing. People often tell me they understand, but they cannot speak. Yeah, it's because you listen for 1,000 hours, but you only spoke for 10. That's why this one doesn't know what to do, but this one understands. And the same thing for problem solving and coding is like, the more you do it, the more you do. And how you can start, and that's, I think, the most important question is like, how do you start? Is like, basically, if you have a problem, like you have a problem, like crashing, slowdowns, whatever. Just take a break and say, okay, let me try to figure this out. So what's the problem? It takes 20 minutes to open the scene. Okay, why is it like this? Let me look at the file independently of the scene. Okay, there is a big object. Is that maybe the problem? Okay, and then you play around, and if you do that constantly, here, there, tomorrow, next week, again and again, after like a few months, you suddenly notice, hey, if there's a problem, I feel confident to solve it. Yes, sometimes I need an expert or something, but even if I call the expert, I can communicate to the expert in hey, I tried this. I don't know why it's a problem. Hey, I love it. If an artist comes to me and has this technical mindset of like, yeah, I don't know how to solve it, but here is the explanation of what I think is the problem. And it's like, wow, this is a head start. You save me time, and I'm more likely to help you, and I'm more likely to be successful in that. And so that is how I see it. It's like this empowerment, and just by solving problems, you already kind of create this empowerment over time. It's not something you can do by like, oh, tomorrow, but it's also something you can do every day, like speaking. Like you can train that by every day. Every conversation can be, okay, let me be a little bit better. Let me think about, have a 5-minute conversation at least in the beginning. The same thing with problem solving.
Like when you're
let me try to catch everything.
When you're learning it, trying to learn a different language, it's exactly it, or like literally like French or whichever other language, right? So there was I just saw that somebody raised a hand. Please just write the question down in the questions window or in the chat, so we can also bring that one up. So I can read it to Alexander if you find the time right now, because I just saw that before, but I cannot
Yeah.
see a
Also
question
very
at the moment.
important
Yeah.
if you learn something like a language or like even Python is so you need to have a goal. Like you should never learn, oh, I want to learn French. Oh, I want to learn Python. Just because. It's always like, oh, I want to write this small tool. Let me learn the basics of Python to do that. Oh, I don't feel want to look like a dumbass when someone gives me Python code. So let me learn the basics of Python with that. So this goal always has this motivational factor. So also you know when you arrived somewhere. Because if you want to learn French, when do you stop? When is it enough? In 10 years? In 1 year? Same thing with Python. If you say, oh, I can write this tool, this is my goal. Do I want to continue or do I stop here because that's enough? Then you also feel not only motivated, but you also know when to stop and when you arrived at your goal, basically.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, so I didn't get the question yet, but we can always, if the question gets noted down, I don't want to ignore it, but we can probably bring it also up in the panel discussion afterwards. So
Sure.
whoever that raised the hand before, because I don't see the name here, we can answer this question either later today or via email. We'll certainly manage to do this. Yes. So I would say, well, thanks a lot for everything, Alexander. It's been fantastic. People know where to go to find more about you, or to reach out if they have some additional comments, and to sign up to your courses. Thank you so much.